So something interesting has just happened in Parliament, and that is that a Liberal Democrat MP, a party on the left, because we give credit where credit's due on this channel, and many Labour MPs that are newly elected for the first time at this general election, have just put a motion in and had the motion won to change the voting system to proportional representation. Now, without getting too much into what that is, what it basically means is that if your political party, like the Reform UK Party, get 14% of the vote at a general election like they did, you would get 14% of the MPs out of the 650. So let's make it easy. If you got 10% of the vote, you would get 650 MPs thereabouts. So somebody like the Reform Party this time, quickly off the top of my head, may have been looking as high as 75 MPs with the vote they got rather than 5 MPs. But a party like Keir Starmer's Labour Party, which gives full credit to these MPs that voted for it from the Labour Party, only got 33% of the vote, a third of the vote, but actually got 2/3 of the MPs. They would only actually get round about 210 MPs rather than the massive majority of 400 and something MPs that they got out of the 650. So full credit here to those Labour MPs who were newly elected and the Liberal Democrat MPs that passed this motion. Now, it was narrowly voted through, and what I'm going to surprise you with now is that, do you know which political party it was that voted against this system? It was the Conservative Party. A Conservative Party that has just returned 120 MPs, its lowest ever election result. Now, let me just put this to you. If the Conservative Party had had their election they just had under proportional representation rather than first past the post, they would have got a quarter of all the seats. They got 25% of the national vote. So a quarter of 650 would be around 160 MPs. They would have got around 40 more MPs under this system, and the Labour Party would have got around 210. So there'd actually only be about 70 MPs difference, where at the moment the Labour Party have over 200 MPs more than the Conservatives. I think they have around 180, majority meaning they have 180 more MPs than all the other parties put together. So I'm very surprised that the Conservatives, but this shows you they are the party of the elites. The Conservatives would vote against this. Now, I will say this when it comes to the Labour Party, they're also the party of the elites, the establishment, and this motion that was passed by the Liberal Democrats will never see, probably, the light of day when it comes to being passed as legislation, because Keir Starmer, when it's just a motion, may well let these Labour MPs vote how they see fit. But when it comes to actually getting this in the House of Commons, rather than try and force them to vote against it, vote against their residents, what they'll do is make sure it just never comes into Parliament. And that's why you see motions passed like this, and you think this is brilliant, we're going to get a new law, and it just never makes its way in of the hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of backlog motions that never see the light of day and never become law. So I'm just going to read you a little bit of The Guardian and what it says regarding this vote. So it says, MPs have voted narrowly in favour of introducing proportional representation electoral system in a move that will almost certainly not change the law, but nonetheless is a symbolic, significant moment for UK politics. The vote on the Liberal Democrat bill calling for a PR system for the UK parliamentary elections and the local elections, not just the general elections, but also use this system in the local elections, was passed 137 to 135. It is the first time the Westminster Parliament has backed such a motion. The measures was introduced in the 10-minute rule bill, which gives MPs the 10 minutes to make the case for the bill before a vote. Even when these are supported, they almost never become law because they are not allocating more time in the Commons. 62 Lib Dems and 59 Labour backbenchers voted it. And it goes on to say that many of those MPs that actually voted this are Labour MPs that only narrowly won. Many of such have a Reform UK candidate just behind them. And they know, I think, that come the next general election, that small majority they had, because the Labour Party was in opposition, as a governing party with all the scandals the Labour Party have had. We'll not go through them on this video, but everyone knows what they are. They're most certainly going to lose votes, so their best bet may actually be proportional representation. And I want to give some credit here, and I think it's the first time that I have done on this channel, to the Liberal Democrats, because the Liberal Democrats have long asked for the PR system, proportional representation, as have parties led by Nigel Farage, because the last few elections they have had less MPs than they would have got proportional representation until this election, because the Lib Dems actually got slightly more on the 12% of the vote share this time than they would have got under proportional representation. But they are sticking to the morals, they're showing what they believe in, and they'll even stand side by side with the Reform UK party, a party which couldn't be more opposite than the Lib Dems when it comes to achieving this. So although these motions aren't often brought to law, is the fact that this is being backed by Labour MPs maybe a sign of things to come. Now I'll tell you why I think this is a good thing. At the next general election, I want Reform UK to be the outright government. But realistically, I think this may well happen. And it is that the Reform UK party may well win the popular vote in the UK. And I mean actually beating the Conservatives and the Labour Party when it comes to who gets the biggest proportion of the vote. Now, under the system that we have now, first past the post, where you must win the most votes in any one area to get 1 point, equaling 1 MP, and then you add them up at the end, the Reform UK party would still only get probably 30, 40, 50 MPs, where the Conservatives and Labour Party would return with hundreds, but getting less of a vote. Now, if we start getting this movement in Parliament now, and my big fears, and that happens, then together it may be too big to where they have to change the system. And I think they would then have to call another general election. Now, it's important to know why some people say they're against this system, and they do have valid points. Proportional representation brings about the party and the politicians that you want. It really does. However, what we've seen in European countries, which most of them have this PR system, is that no party ever wins an outright majority. You imagine you've got 5 parties fighting for 100%. It's very hard for one party to get over 50% of the vote, meaning that that one party can never pass any laws if the others group together. So what you tend to see happen is parties group together in coalitions to get more than 50% of the MPs. They try and work together for a while, then communications break down, and you end up back in a hung parliament. So on one hand, I do want this PR system because I want to see small parties like the Reform UK party absolutely crush the establishment. But on the other hand, I do understand why this isn't popular. I think the best system that the United Kingdom could have would be that of like the United States of America have, where you have the one individual standing. You still would get the MPs elected, but you would be voting for a Prime Minister on the ballot paper rather than just your MP. And I think that way you would have your senior figurehead, which I believe would be Nigel Farage in that type of system, and then have proportional representation on the MPs. Separate the powers, so the Prime Minister, which would be like the President, has a certain amount of powers to get the country going in the direction of what he or she was voted on, but then you still have the scrutiny from the proportional representation of members. I think that would be the best system, but of course we live under a monarchy. Now, under a monarchy, they say you don't have a president, you only have a prime minister. But I'm sure we could have a prime minister and a king or queen and just have more powers to that prime minister than have previously had. But that's me wishful thinking, boring you with what I think we should do. Please let me know what you think. What do you think about this motion? Is it good for things to come with proportional representation? Most people on this channel support the Reform Party or parties more centre to centre-right. So let me know what you think then about the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party, although we may not support them. Are these 50 Labour MPs and Liberal Democrats doing this for the right reason? What will happen if this ever did come into law? And what do you think about PR versus first past the post? And what do you think to the pros and cons and any other systems that we may well adopt? Thank you all for watching, and can I please ask you to subscribe to this channel and help me beat that algorithm on YouTube and get these videos out to more people. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next video.